Hello and happy Thursday, everybody. Josh here on the wrong lead, and I pulled a Caleb tonight, and I brought the bottle in. So, we got a lot of races we're going to try and get through here. So, might need some jet fuel, some liquid assistance to come through and help us out here. But a man who needs no liquid assistance but uses it anyways, Mr. Caleb Knight. Caleb, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. We've had some beyond terrible weather here in Boston lately. I mean, some parts got snow. We've had like 50-mile-per-hour winds and hail. So it has been a bad day to be outside, but a good day to stay inside and get ready for Keeneland opening day. So it's pretty exciting.
Over under race, we'll say race 10 on Keeneland before you say fuck this meet.
Race 10 tomorrow or Saturday?
Saturday.
Under.
I think I was talking with Andrew, and I was like, dude, I'm always so excited for the Keeneland meet. I'm always pumped for it. And then I get into the second day, and I'm like, why was I so excited for this?
It's so true. It's so true.
You know, I don't know. I always feel like it ends up being maybe chalkier than I think. And then there's always just like one just like impossible horse every day. And it's just like, all right, I have no idea. It's like find the bomb and then key the chalk.
It's the nature of those boutique meets where you get shippers from anywhere from Gulfstream, Tampa, Aqueduct, Belterra, Horseshoe Indy. I mean, just all over the place. You know, Turfway's been a huge influence lately. It's always kind of unsure how those horses are going to run. So it's a tough place to play.
Matt says race 2 on Friday. Mr. Shotton himself. He's going to call the bias on the first race and then flips the second race, which is going to be the baby race that we were talking about a little bit before the stream, which is just so funny. But let's bring in. We've talked about chalk, and I figure that's a great time to bring in Mark. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. But no, my thing with Keeneland is always the fact that, and I know Caleb and I have talked about this a bunch, you'll get this race, you'll get like a 6 or 7 horse field. You'll be like, oh, 3 or 4 of these are all the same, except for one of them gets bet down to 2-5. The other 3 are all at 4-1, and the 2-5 wins going away. And you're like, wait, what did I miss? The ye old Kentucky fuckery that always seems to be present. But I will say it's really nice to get back to some decent turf racing. Keeneland has, I think the turf product in the spring is absolutely phenomenal that they put out. Great racing, really, it's sort of that first of the, you start to see those horses that, were really good horses last year. They went away over the winter, and now they're kind of coming back, and that's really fun. It's really fun to kind of get those back. So excited for Keeneland, but much like you guys, I will probably make it through, I don't know, half a day tomorrow, and I will swear it off until next year, or at least until the fall meet, because the fall meet's playable. Fall meet makes sense, but man, this spring meet is always just a tough one.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of tough, we got some sequences to talk about, and I think we're focused on the late pick, or not the late pick 5. It's the all stakes pick 5 at Keeneland, but we have 2 other Derby preps going on, and we have a pick 3 that connects all 3 of these Derby preps. So an interesting, and we'll say a fun bet. I don't know if necessarily a good bet, since they are charging 3% more for no apparent reason for this. It's an 18% takeout wager as opposed to 15%.
That's normal NYRA rate.
That's normal NYRA rate, but it tends to be that these special wagers tend to get a little bit of discount sometimes, like the Keeneland Turf Pick 3. I think Santa Anita Turf Pick 3 is also 15%.
Yes, it is.
And they're like, hey, we do like every other track does this, but we're not going to do it. Which, whatever, right? We're not going to get too hung up on it. Hey, we complain that horse racing does nothing new. Hey, this is something new and fun and different. Maybe they'll get it better. They'll get it right the second time, but I won't hold my breath. But we have that. We're going to also talk about the last race on Keeneland because that means we cover the turf pick 3 and we got the all stakes pick 5. So we're going to have opinions on 3 different sequences. A bunch of these races are going to kind of overlap there, but we got tons of races to get through. And obviously in true On the Wrong Lead fashion, we have been getting through these races in record time. I think last time we probably just bullshitted for a half hour because we got done so quick. So we decided to add like 3 additional races more than we normally cover. So I'm very interested to see how this turns out. Matthew DeSantis giving us a weather update saying that it stopped raining and he believes that we will have a fast track for Wood Memorial Day. And you know what? That's a great transition because that's where we're going to start here. We're going to take a look at the Wood Memorial. That's going to be race 10 on your card here at Aqueduct. And you got a field of 13 drawn in here. I'm sure we're going to start talking, and Matthew's already going to know some horses that have early scratched, which I hope not. But taking just kind of a quick look at this, with this many horses, it's hard not to think that we're going to get an honest, if not a fast pace in this race. Taking a quick look at the Brisnet, I'm sure Timeform has got this coded as a fast pace because they generally have stuff that's got 13 plus runners listed as a fast pace. But I think this one's got a good chance at actually showing up. And if that's the case, I do think it makes the 4, the morning line favorite, deterministic, pretty tough in this spot. But I wouldn't be doing my best Caleb impression if I didn't try to beat this horse. So I'm definitely going to try and beat this horse. But before you get the impression, let's get the real thing. Mr. Caleb Knight, I'll let you start. Where did you land on this race?
Yeah, so there's 3 horses that I think that I kind of like to win this race. And one of them is, I think, the 4 deterministic. He ran a really nice race in the Gotham last out. He did. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm going to single this horse, but I do think he ran a good race off a big layoff against a really nice horse in Just a Touch. Going a mile for the first time off a big layoff, like we mentioned. Dealt with some kickback. Was on a sloppy track. So I was just impressed by that race. I'm a little curious as to how far he may ultimately want to go, although he did look just fine going a mile. I will kind of say that taking 7-5 on a horse that's trying 2 turns for the first time, really has the pedigree to probably be moved up by the slop as opposed to have to overcome it. So there's some question marks there, but I was visually impressed with his effort last out in the Gotham. So he is a very logical contender there. The horse that I'm going to have most of my play going through, and I really hope Matthew doesn't jump in and tell me that he scratched, is the number 13, Uncle Heavy, the Parks shipper. Mark laughs, so I assume he has this horse, or he just.
Oh, it's my top horse.
That's my A as well.
Oh wow, so it's a community horse. This is the only what I thought somewhat clever opinion I had for most of the stream is. So I just think this horse he's already gotten a mile and an eighth in the Withers last time out. And that race is actually much better than it looks when in my opinion, February 3rd had an extreme rail bias at Aqueduct that day. The inside was incredibly strong. You can check the track trends page on NYRA. They tend to validate that as well. And this horse was 3 or 4 wide against the bias the entire way and was able to run down a respectable horse in El Grando, who came back to run a fairly decent race in the Gotham, setting honest fractions, if not swift fractions, in the slop to finish 3rd behind Deterministic, only beaten 2 lengths. So I really think that the 13 here, Uncle Heavy, is in with a huge shot. I do kind of hate the draw. I think that's going to be kind of rough for him to overcome from that post with his run style of not really wanting to be a dead closer, but kind of having to be somewhat forwardly placed. So if he can work out a trip, I really like him. I think 8-1, 6-1, 8-1, I think is about a fair price for him in here as well. So Matt's kind of bringing up the point that I just mentioned. The post is definitely a risk, I think. He's going to have to probably take back and make a bigger run like he did in a couple of his previous starts. But we'll see. I think the price will be fair enough with the likes of Tuscan Sky and Deterministic in here. So he's one that I'm pretty excited to bet. But I know you guys liked him as well. So by all means, go off.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I liked about him was the fact that that Withers had no pace. I mean, they went 49-2 to the half, and he still rallied from off the pace. I mean, that race should have held together much better than it did. To me, that kind of says there's more in the tank. I know he was the Sheets kind of wise guy horse going into that race as well. Sheets were all over him and really loved what he had been doing, and he's just kind of consistently shown up. Now, I think for me the biggest, the post draw is obviously not optimal. And my biggest thing is his two best races have come across off going. And if the track should be fast on Saturday. So is he a horse that just really kind of likes the off going or really handles it better? And that kind of moves him up. But, I think he's a really interesting player. He's not going to take money because of the connections. It wouldn't surprise me if he takes a little bit more money off the 8-1 line, but I think you get a really fair price on him. And I think he's a major player here. And I like him quite a lot. There's some other horses I like, but I know Josh was on him as well. So anything else to add?
I mean, we were a little bit concerned about the weather, whether it was going to come up sloppy, with just the amount of rain that we've been getting on the East Coast. So I thought this was one that has also run well with obviously on the muddy Aqueduct track, which I think is just a completely different surface. You either like the mud at Aqueduct or you don't. You could like the mud at every other track, but the mud at Aqueduct is just a completely different place. But you brought up a good point. There was a fairly paceless race, and this is a horse that made up 3 lengths from second call and 3.5 lengths in the straight. Actually technically lost some ground there. I did look at that nursery where the horse was a little bit further back, where I think, to Matt's point, is probably where you're going to see this horse. You're going to see this horse a little bit further back. But I will say, with the amount of pace that is in front of Uncle Heavy, I think that is going to give him some time to actually kind of be able to get across and save some ground. Just because I think a lot of those horses inside of him are going to clear out and make a little bit of room. So, I don't know. I thought pace wise, this is a horse that made a ton of sense, and has got a win over the surface, over the distance, and when I look at the 4 horse, who I mean theoretically should be the big time favorite, and obviously he's been working well. Has got a win on this track going a mile, but you look at the pedigree and you see Liam's Map on top, Spitestown on the bottom. And I know we're only going a furlong more, but I mean, that furlong for that pedigree kind of means a lot. I don't think the classics distance is going to suit the pedigree of this horse. But I mean, obviously, we also thought that Into Mischief would never get more than a mile. And hey, he won 2 derbies. So I don't know. I thought there was a bit going against the 4 in this spot. So I kind of was looking for a horse like the 4 at a better price, and I think you get that in the 13. But one horse that is absolutely not like any of the others in this race is my other pick in this race, and maybe I'm being. Maybe I'm channeling my co-host, Mr. Lord Miles himself, Andrew Champagne, a little too much and trying to get too cute in this spot to find a big price. But Evening News, coming in here from Turfway Park, has won 2 of the last 3 on the synthetic, and finished second in that 1-2 back. And I look at this horse. And I just tried to kind of think about the surface this horse has been running on. Obviously, the synthetic track at Turfway. which tends to be synthetic tends to be a little bit deeper. It tends to be a little bit slower of a surface. And I really do think that does kind of match along with the type of surfaces that we get at Aqueduct. And maybe I'm just completely making this up and I'm just looking for a reason to bet a 20-1 horse coming in from Turfway Park. But, notably, Turfway Park shippers don't tend to do super well at Keeneland first time out, first time from Turfway. So, they're pointing this horse to a completely different prep. They're pointing him out to, out here to New York. And when I look at the pace figures for this horse, I do see a horse with a bit of late kick. I know he's been doing it on the front end, but, like I said, those races just tend to be a little bit slower. And I think that there's going to be so much other pace in this race that I don't think that this horse is going to be on the lead. I think this is going to be one that isn't as fast as some of these other horses early and is going to wind up maybe with more of a tracking trip, sitting fourth, third, fourth, fifth in that area. And at least looking at the late pace figures does have, I think, a late pace figure that's competitive in this field. So if it does fall apart, I think this could be one that maybe gets the first run on the rest of the horses. But yeah, I was just trying to go somewhere different, try to get a little bit creative, maybe taking that polypop angle, first time off the synthetic, coming to Aqueduct instead of going to Keeneland. And hey, I mean, Linda makes a killing taking these horses from Kentucky and running them back in New York. So why not Michael Pino keeping the horse and bringing it over? But I don't know, Caleb. Who else you got? I know you said you had 3 horses you like. So
yeah, I mean, if Evening News wins off the pace, I'll buy you a bottle of bourbon. How's that?
All right, hey.
That I didn't like the pick in the first place, but to think he's not going to be on the lead for a synthetic horse that probably hates kickback, I feel like that's a unique take. So I'll get you a bottle of bourbon if he wins off the pace. So yeah, I don't hate the horse. I just don't think that's a trip he gets. With that being said, the other horse that I thought would take a lot more money, but I just checked Bovada and they have him at fixed odds of 9-2, is the number 9 Tuscan Sky, who I know Matt likes quite a bit. I think this is a horse who's 2 for 2 lifetime. It's Todd Pletcher. It's your favorite jockey, Manny Franco. The horse is bred to get this distance. Has just gotten a mile and a 16th at the fairgrounds. Has beaten Nash by 2 lengths, who finally got a turn back in his next start and just crushed a field going a 1-turn distance. I can't remember if it was a mile or 7 furlongs, but this horse is fast. On some metrics, he's actually faster than deterministic, and he's probably a little better bred to get the distance, in my opinion. So he's already proven around 2 turns. He also has the question of he's only caught off tracks in his career. So how is he going to handle that when he gets a fast track? But I'm not completely convinced that off track has dramatically moved from up in either of those starts. I think he's just a nice horse. So he's one that he's the kind of horse I think might get the trip that you discussed for your 6 horse, kind of let the inside speeds go a little bit. He sits a length and a half off the pace and gets first run. Maybe save some ground. So he's one that I thought would take more money. I thought he would be in the 3-1 kind of a range, but according to the offshore odds I'm looking at, he's 9-2, and I think that's an excellent price for this horse.
Yeah, only one other horse that we haven't mentioned that I thought was worth mentioning, and Josh has mentioned classic distance pedigree champion Into Mischief, so might as well go to the one horse in Resilience. Bill Mott trained horse, took a few times to break his maiden, did it going long on the dirt. And he's shown he can pass other horses, has enough speed to be forwardly placed. Definitely needs to take a step forward here, but gets Johnny V up, which is definitely something which I like. And I think he probably sits a pretty decent trip in this one. I don't think he's going to get caught up on that pace tool. He can let the 3 or 4 go that want to go up on the front end. I kind of trust Johnny V to pace him out and to set appropriate fractions with him. He was on for that maiden break, so probably a similar type of trip. And, this is a horse that, because of that risen star, where he may just not have liked the kickback from, from the off going, you probably get some value. So I thought resilience for Bill Mott here was an interesting sort of, that's the other horse that we haven't mentioned yet that I was interested in.
I thought it was interesting that he shows up here, given that he's been campaigned in Florida for most of the spring in terms of where he's been, training. And we just missed the Florida Derby like last week. I mean, is this Belmont being strategic, or is this Belmont looking for a softer spot? I don't think he's good enough to win this race, but I'm just curious. I mean, why do you think he's here? Because that's something that I don't know.
I think this is Bill Mott being tactical and avoiding the other big players. He figured that Fierceness was probably loaded at Gulfstream, so he didn't want to go there. And I realized he ran that Risen Star, but I don't think Bill Mott ships to the fairgrounds very often. So I think this is just a spot where Bill Mott does keep a stable in the winter in Naira, and he was kind of looking at the field and going, okay, this is probably where I get the softest spot in a place that I have a training base, and that's where I'm going to point to. And we know that, I don't want to bash the Wood, but the last 20 years, the Wood has not been a tier prep. It's been a softer prep. It's not been a place that's produced a lot of Derby winners, but if you have, some ownership that wants to get, in the gate in the Derby, and you're looking for that soft spot, this gets you the points, it gets you in, and it's a nice place to run. And honestly, even a second here might get you in.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, he's a horse that I don't think I end up using, simply because I think at 6-1, that's not quite the price I would want. But he's one of those ones that makes me scratch my head a little bit as far as just trying to figure out what to do with him. So if he does win, it wouldn't totally surprise me.
Yeah, there's also the case that he looks like he has been managed a little bit oddly. There's some, a couple layoff lines in there. I don't know if that's just how Bill wanted to schedule him. I don't imagine it was. So, I wonder if there's some little nagging thing, and he figured the little bit of extra time would be good for him. Who knows?
I do love the fact that you, Caleb, were so quick to jump on me over the 6, and Matt, my Shot-in co-host, saying synth pop drying forward track, love me a lousy horse, evening news, and then immediately said, oh no, we're screwed. David Barista also likes the 6 as well, so
I was fine with the 6 just being a Josh horse, given the fact that it's an E8, even though your whole prelude to this race was how much speed there was. But yeah.
Hey, I just don't think he's as fast as some of these other horses early, but we'll see.
Yeah, you'll get your price. So I mean, if he wins, you should make lots of money.
Anything else you guys want to talk about in this race?
Oh God, how insufferable! If that horse wins, how insufferable is the podcast going to be?
Which one?
Oh my God, you and Andrew.
Andrew, why?
Okay, if Andrew gives out Lord Miles at 50-1, and that horse is also going to be 50-1. So if you two both, go back to back giving out 50-1 shots, oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I hold that kind of stuff over your guys' heads too much. I mean, Flapjack notwithstanding, I think at a certain point I
deserve the Flapjack one, so
Oh, Matthew's spending your credit card points over here, Caleb. He said Caleb needs to buy bottles of bourbon for Matt C and David too if they win. So
I tell you what, if this horse wins off the pace, I will buy both of them a bottle of whatever they drink as well.
Oh man! All right, let's. So I was gonna go in order, but I figured, hey, let's knock out the Santa Anita race, the other kind of one-off race part of the sequence before we get into the last 6 races at Keeneland. But we got the Santa Anita Derby, and man, how far this race has fallen. Used to be, one of the just premier preps for the Derby, and I don't know. The last couple of years, it just seems like it's lost its luster, and I know a certain trainer out west being suspended or not suspended, being barred from running in the Derby has made things complicated. But even so, it feels like a lot of people are kind of dodging this race. You get 8 horses signed up here, and I thought similar to what I had kind of said in the Wood. I think you're going to get a ton of pace in this race, and West Coast pace is real pace, and I think that this is going to be a I don't know. I think this is going to be an off the pace. We're going to see an off the pace winner here, and normally I would say you're going to see an off the pace winner at a big price, but with only 8 horses, and I think with a lot of these horses sharing a barn, you're probably going to see some tactical riding here, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Mark, where did you kind of land here?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's a fairly, there's a fairly solid pace in here. But the problem is I don't have any real creative opinions. I mean, I think the top 3 here, who I will imagine will be, I think the morning line's a little off. I think Winstock will probably end up taking some money. But I think it goes through, race goes through Stronghold, Imagination, and Winstock. And I think I landed on Stronghold probably for the reasons you're alluding to. And the fact that I think he can sit a little bit off from it. And when they go a little spicy on the front end, he's going to be the first one to kind of take a run at the leaders. So I put him over the other 2, but I was not super interested in this race. I did not think it was a great betting race. Don't love it. Don't have any strong opinions, but I'd lean Stronghold if you twisted my arm.
Yeah, I landed there too. I just think, you look at the pace here, you see all the ones, and you see a horse that has at least set off the leaders. I thought he made a ton of sense. The 2 looks to be possibly the speed of the speed in this race and is drawn inside. So yeah, I mean, the 5 too. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Juan just goes nuclear on the 5 with the 2, and Dettori sits off with the 4. I mean, I don't know. Like you got the stuff. People are gonna play games. I mean, remember, wasn't that long ago when Roadster really needed the points, and the 4th best Baffert horse ends up winning the Santa Anita Derby. Like, come on, give me a break there. So who knows what happens there? But I'm avoiding, and I like the 3 Stronghold here. And I think for the outsider, I'm taking a look at the 7 McVeigh here for John Sheriffs and Hector Barrios. I know still a maiden, but this is a horse. John Sheriffs is not necessarily known for bringing his horses along quickly. Or at all, hey. But what's funny is you mentioned, I say quickly, and then before you even said it all I could think of is all of the Zenyatta progeny that he's had in training and just never ran. For one reason or another.
All two of them.
Has he only had 2?
I think she only had 3 foals, right? And only 2 of them.
I think she lost one, right?
She lost one. Yeah. There's Zelda that hasn't run, and it's like and then there's a new one, I think, recently, her last foal. But anyways, I'm just strictly looking for a horse that hasn't been on the lead, but at the same time, this is also not necessarily a horse that's made up a ton of ground. So this thing's gonna have to really fall apart, I think, for McVeigh to make up any ground. But you look at the work tab, and the work tab at least makes you think that this horse has got a little bit of ability. Has fired 2 straight bullets. We'll take a look at the workout report. Maybe I'm just getting a little too creative here, but I thought the 7, just trying to zag off of all the speed was interesting here. Caleb, you're taking one of the Bafferts, aren't you?
No.
Okay.
I'm taking both of the Bafferts.
You son of
you guys are overthinking this one. It's Bob Baffert's state, and everyone else is just living in it. When is the last time he hasn't won one of these California prep races? I mean, I guess Practical Move had an upset, but that was also a Yak Teen. I don't know what the deal was with the Baffert Yak Teen situation at the time. Like, it's just
that was a pure Yak Teen.
I think it was.
That wasn't a Yakfert.
Yeah, I think it was. Baffert didn't really have any runners in that race because of Yak Teen, I think. He had whatever. Point being is, I'm not worrying about the pace. I'm not worrying. Baffert horses are very rarely one-dimensional. They're just freakishly fast. The number 4 is your most likely winner, Imagination. He seems like he's a little bit better since he's been at Santa Anita compared to Del Mar. He won the San Felipe last time, 2 back. He finished second by a neck to, I forget the horse's name. It's like May Moon or something like that. This is a horse that beat multiple other runners in this field by 7 and 11 lengths when they faced off. So I think he's the horse to beat for sure. But I think Winstock is probably better than 8-1. And I agree with Mark. I don't think you get 8-1. I think you get 5-1, maybe 4-1. But I think he's better than that. I mean, this horse just did not like the mud at all in the Oaklawn Park. He hit some traffic, and then he just completely shut down. You toss that race out, and then maybe you figure this is a horse that's always needed 2 turns. The sprint races weren't really much to write home about, but the 2 routes over fast dirt track have both been good. He actually beat Stronghold 2 back at Los Al, who I don't really like in here. So if you're going to give me 3 or 4 times the price on a Baffert Hernandez horse, it clearly cannot win. So yeah, I do like the both Bafferts in here, and I won't use anybody else.
So wait, you like Winstock? That means I can just cross him off. Excellent.
Pretty
Thank
much, yeah. Unless there's a way
I appreciate that. I really do. Do you know? And I guess I had this question when I was capping. Obviously Baffert's been going to Juan as his number 8 tier jock for a while now. Do we have the stories about why Juan got off Imagination? Was that just did he have somebody better to ride, or what's the deal there? He was on for the maiden break, and then next out he wasn't. So
I don't know what the story. I'd have to go back and see if Juan was riding that day. I'm not sure. Juan is still the first call for Bob 90% of the time. Occasionally he'll go to Pratt or somebody else instead. Vittori, Baffert's kind of a newer development. I think Vittori kind of just inherited that mount, so to speak, because I don't think Juan was riding out there that day. I'm not sure if he traveled or something else happened, but regardless, I mean, I'm not reading it. I would read some into the fact this is a Bob Baffert horse that has had 3 different jockeys in 5 career starts. That's not common for him. I would also maybe read a little bit into Imagination having atypically slow workouts for a Bob Baffert horse. I mean, they always post bullets. I mean, look at Winstock. And you go back and you see some 50-second 4 furlong works. That's weirdly slow, but that's also kind of consistent to what this horse does. I'm not sure what the strategy is there, but I'm not going to overthink it. I think it is a very talented runner. But I do think there's some things that make you scratch your head a little bit and think this isn't – there's some characteristics here that aren't typical of some Baffert horses. I'll agree with you there.
Yeah, agreed.
And the fact that Kyle Frey used to ride the 5 horse, like what the heck is that?
Very true.
Nuts. I don't know. The 5's an interesting horse, right? Sired by a Salamini, who, if I remember correctly, was a Baffert horse, wasn't he? He was the Baffert horse that just like
he did not run well in the Derby. I know that much.
Yeah, he was just bad. He was just bad.
Was it a
horse,
Baffert horse?
I thought so. Maybe I'm wrong.
You might be right.
But Salamini is stands for $6,500, and this horse was bought for $700,000. So someone made a lot of money on that horse already. So congratulations to the connections.
Salamini was an Asmussen horse.
Asmussen horse, okay.
For Asmussen,
who am I thinking of then? I'm thinking of another S horse. I'll have to remember. But let me get to David's comment. He likes Topolo here, the 7. Or the 2 horse, sorry, the E7 for John Sadler.
We can just look at the E before you look at the number. It's fine.
Yeah, I know. That's all I look at. But I did look at this horse a little bit. Obviously, the 58-2 work was interesting. And I was thinking that this is going to be your inside drawn speed. I'm a little confused why they went to synthetic right away with this horse. Maybe they thought that was going to be an easier race, and they ran into Endlessly, who came back and won the Jeff Ruby Stakes. I think that does kind of flatter that effort a little bit, because you got a horse that came back and won a 100-point prep. Yes, it is a 100-point prep, but Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with this horse coming back to dirt. I thought he was a little intriguing. Once again, the synthetic on synthetic back off. That synthetic out at Golden Gates is weird. It's the golden hour is always just a absolute nightmare to handicap because of Golden Gate. I did think he was a little bit interesting in the spot.
Yeah. I have big questions about the distance for him, but I think he's a nice horse. I thought he ran a good race in El Camino Real, but I think a mile and eighth is really pushing it for him.
I just think he pace complexion wise, I think he's going to be really up against it. That's all.
Yeah. All right. Moving on here. We're on to Keeneland. If you missed it on Drinking Champagne this week, Mr. Andrew Champagne and myself, we went ahead and handicapped the Turf Pick 3 on tomorrow's card. I think it's a fun little sequence, and there's an Appleby horse that I absolutely hate. That's going to be a short price in that sequence. So check that out, obviously, on our YouTube channel. I also have another video I recorded today with a couple of gambling podcasters I really, really enjoy, and Mark and Dr. Mike from You Can Bet on That. Really, really fun little conversation. Mark still lives in San Diego, but Mike lives in Minnesota now. But they lived in San Diego for basically their entire lives, and they just talked a lot about how they used to spend a lot of time at Del Mar, and they had some really, really great stories. And we just talked about how kind of horse racing fits in with, I think, the bigger kind of gambling landscape, right? They're more casino based. They do sports, and their horse racing handle has progressively gone down, and we just had a discussion about it. I thought it was pretty cool. But that'll be up on our channel and podcast feed sometime later tonight. We tons of content, and also thank you guys for checking out the shorts that we've been putting out. I know we put out a bunch of shorts last week. It's something that with Mark going to NHC and Mark doing BCBC. He's been putting some of that stuff out. I put out a Saudi Cup video, and we've just been putting out quick one hitters out there, and you guys seem to like it. Some of our most viewed content, so we'll keep that stuff coming. But just appreciate you guys checking that stuff out. So Keeneland Commonwealth Grade 3. We're going 7 furlongs here for 4-year-old and up, and we got a field of 9 here. And man, whenever your morning line favorite has got the name Minnesota in it, I feel like I'm just ready to bet against it because it's probably some Canterbury horse. And sure enough, I think this is a old Lothenbach horse that probably was probably transitioned after Lothenbach basically sold off all their assets. This horse is 5-2 on the morning line. I'm not seeing it. I know Briz really liked that last race, but I don't know, Mark. What did Timeform like it? DRF like that last race?
Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
They really gushed about that race. But I guess my issue, and I don't want to steal your thunder here, Josh, but I guess I have the same sort of take on that horses that you do, which is that race kind of seemed to come out of nowhere figures wise. So you have to kind of assume that horse bounces, right? Like it feels like, I don't want to say it's a suspect figure, but it does feel like it came a little bit out of nowhere. And horses don't. 5-year-olds don't just suddenly, find another 10 points of speed figure and then repeat. So,
yeah, I guess I was a little curious, especially looking at the pace in this race. I just don't think I want a horse coming from that far off it. I know he closed into a slow pace and he closed into 5.5 furlongs, but we're going a little bit. Or we're going a fair bit further here. I mean, the difference between 5.5 and 7 is pretty big. This is a horse that does have a win going a mile at Ellis, so it's not like he's never run this distance. But I thought, especially at the price, that was definitely a play against. I landed on 2 horses here as A's, and I got a C written down as kind of a just. Maybe we'll toss in. Maybe we won't. We'll start with my top pick, the 2 Wicco. Obviously, it's a Wesley Ward horse here. Wesley has had this horse on all 3 surfaces, and you know, I feel like Wesley is like one of those guys who just can't stop tinkering with stuff. Like he just can't leave well enough alone, right? I mean, he tried the horse at 5.5 going on the turf. Then, yes, 6.5 at Kentucky Downs. I mean, that's practically routing with the way that race shape kind of shows up. It's more like a mile at some other tracks. So, going there, coming back to 6 furlongs, then finally breaks its maiden going a mile on the synthetic, and goes back to turf, back to synthetic, back to going long on the turf. Finally, this horse shows up going 7 furlongs at Keeneland and wins by 4 3/4 lengths on a fast track at Keeneland. Sat off the pace and just absolutely blew past everybody in the stretch. They stretched him out to going that 1 turn mile at Churchill, and then for some reason they just put him back on the synthetic. Maybe that was the only thing running. They needed to get another run before. But I think it's pretty safe to say this horse likes the dirt, and I think the 7 furlong trip is obviously what he's done best at. So I think getting back to that trip, I think is going to be really good for this horse, and I think like I said, he's going to be forwardly placed. I don't see a whole heck of a lot of speed in this race, which leads me to my second choice here, the 1 Frat Pack. Previously trained by Chad Brown, but has been in Beckman D. Whitworth's stable for the last couple months here. And, this horse kind of had a run at Oak Lawn, and I don't know what happened there, but I'm kind of going to cross the line through that one. First time with a new trainer, at the Oak Lawn track, which is kind of a funny track. I think you cross the line through that one, and you kind of look at that Aqueduct race 3 back, or the Saratoga race, 4 or 5 back, and I think that just makes sense. I think he's your inside drawn speed. I think he'll probably show more speed than the 2, especially with IRAD on the 2, and we know that IRAD just loves to rate just a little bit even on speed horses. So. I think your 1 ends up being your speed here. So I just got the 1 and the 2 as A's, and I got another horse I kind of like as a C. But Mark, I know we talked a little bit. I know you like this one as well.
I do, and I couldn't get the scrolling ticker up quite fast enough while you were talking about it because I am not that good with Restream. But yeah, no, I like Frat Pack in here quite a lot. I think I had a lot of the same take that you did, Josh, honestly, which is that. Yeah, somebody like Wicco or Raise Cane are probably your 2 most likely winners, but I don't think they tower over this field. It's a huge field. It's really competitive. I think there's an honest enough pace, but I would tend to agree with you. I don't think there's a ton of pace in this race. I think Raise Cane probably needs a little pace help on the front end. Wicco can probably make more of his own. So I like him over Raise Cane. But, I think the intent here is pretty obvious. You're going to put Corrales up and you're going to tell him to go to the front end with Frat Pack and hold on as long as you can. And this is the kind of race that Corrales steals on the front end. It just feels like one of those ones where he goes to the front end and nobody ever can quite reel him in. I've seen this game before. I've seen him do it at Keeneland more times than I care to admit. And yeah, I think he's a very, very interesting player here at an absolutely stupid price. But I will say, if both of us are on the horse for the same reason, you don't get anywhere near 30 to 1. You probably get half that, which I'd be okay as a stab. He's not a horse. He's a horse that he's probably more of a tournament type play for me than he necessarily is a horse that I would make in an A and an ABC structure type. So, but no, I do I like Frat Pack in here quite a bit. I thought Wicco and Raise Cane both made a ton of sense. And beyond that, I was really grasping at straws for who else to go to. So hopefully Caleb has some articulate, bright ideas he can throw out here.
I didn't. I don't know if I'd call them bright nor articulate, but so the horses Josh mentioned, the 1 and 2, are kind of my B's in this race. And I kind of see it the way he did. I just decided to maybe emphasize opinions in a slightly different way. The horses that I ended up feeling a little more confident in pressing a little bit was both the number 6 and 7. So to me, this was a race where I really struggled to determine who the leader was going to be. It could be the one. If he runs any of those Chad Brown races, it probably is the one. But he most certainly did not run that kind of a race last out. And maybe it's the layoff, sure. But I mean, it's significantly worse than what we've seen from Frat Pack. So I'm not so sure that it's really just the layoff at play. I kind of wonder if maybe the trainer switch plus the layoff is coupled together to this horse maybe just doesn't have that early speed anymore. I ride on the 2. I mean, he has kind of router speed, I suppose. So I was looking for horses that could be forwardly placed in a race where it's a very murky pace scenario. And I landed on the 6 and 7. We'll start with the 6, Beau Cruz. I'm actually giving a lot of weight to the fact that Jose Ortiz gets up on this horse because he certainly seems like the kind of jockey that puts a horse like this on the lead. This horse has shown speed in the past. Has actually wired 2 races at the fairgrounds and at Churchill, and then ran into the Matt Winn, which ended up being pretty good with Disarm and Verifying. He was an okay third in that race. The Iowa Derby just didn't quite show up in that day. It happens. He was the favorite in that race at 9-5 and just absolutely didn't show up. I'm not really sure what happened. Something probably went wrong considering he missed about 8 months after the fact. But then came back at the fairgrounds and ran a nice race coming off the pace there. To me, that's kind of clearly a tune-up race. Second off the layoff here, Alstar is fairly strong. And the turn back here, I think, does sort of fit for this horse. I think he'll be more forwardly placed in here. He's not a horse that I love, but he's a horse at 12-1 that should be in the top, 2 or 3 horses on the pace, I would assume. And I think he has a combination of the right trip and has at times shown enough talent that he's one of one to take a shot on. Somewhat of an alternate or opposite view would be the 7, Hear Me Song. This is a horse that has also shown good speed in a couple of his races, but he's also shown an ability to win from pretty far off the pace. He actually won this race last year, closing from 8th out of 10 to end up getting up by a neck. And that Commonwealth was probably better than this. I mean, Hoist of Gold would be a pretty big favorite in this race if he happened to be in here. And some folks may look at the last race at Turfway and be a little bit, scared off. But this is pretty much the exact same prep pattern he came into the Commonwealth last year, where he came back off of a bit of a layoff, prepped in the Big Daddy, and then came into Commonwealth and won the race at a nice price. 9-2 is a little on the short side for what I want for this horse, but I'm not worried at all about the prep race. I think that was clearly exactly it got him exactly what he needed to. This is a horse that loves Keeneland. He's 2 for out of 4 starts. He has 2 wins and 2 second places. Second off the layoff, he has that synthetic pop that some people really tend to like in here. So I think that the Hear Me Song is also a big player in here. So for me, 6 and 7 were my A's. 1 and 2s were my B's, and I did not know what to do with Race Kane.
Did you want to talk about Race Kane at all, Mark? I know you said you liked him a little bit.
I liked him a little bit. He's had some success, at Keeneland. And he does seem to do pretty well at this trip. He's 2 for 3 going it. Gets Sayas back, who has been very good on him. I know Sayas was up on him for that win back, the 2 back in the Perryville last year here. He's a horse that, again, he's a little bit pace dependent. He does need a little bit of a pace setup on the front end. No way on earth am I interested in at 3-1. That's way too short. But, I think he's a kind of horse that I wouldn't want to let him knock me out of a pick 5, but would I ever spot bet him? Probably not. He probably takes a little bit too much money on name recognition as well, being a horse that doesn't necessarily love to win races, but doesn't necessarily kind of, people know the name. They need him to go a little spicy, and you need a couple of the speeds to hook up on the front end and this to come apart and melt a little bit. And maybe if it does, he can pick off the pieces and be rolling late. I trust Louis to kind of get him rolling, but he makes sense. He's got races that fit here. He's just not my top choice, and not a horse I necessarily love, but I feel like I would have to use in something like a pick 5.
Yeah. The only other horse that I was a little bit interested in is the cheapest of speeds, and we're talking Illinois bred speed.
Yes.
Which is
yes.
the 5, which is the 5 horse. Richie's on a roll, and I'll tell you, man. I have this horse written down as a C. We'll see what type of ticket structure I end up having for this. I generally don't use C's, but I wanted to talk about this horse a little bit because when you look at the one horse and you're obviously you see a horse that has shown some speed. That last race does still kind of cause me a little concern. Obviously the horse is 30-1, so like, yeah, of course I'm going to use it. But I think if the 1 doesn't go, there's a good shot that the 5 here, Richie's on a roll, ends up on the lead. And I mean, Emmanuel Giles knows he's only got one way to go, and that's to get to the front. Obviously he won an open allowance race last time out, coming from off the pace. But you look at those FanDuel and Hawthorne races, and those are generally pretty fast tracks. And he was right up on that lead, and I think that they're going to come here and they're going to be aggressive, and this is a horse that has been aggressive, going 6 and 7 for a long. So I thought that this was an interesting horse. If the 1 and the 2 kind of just give the lead up, I think there's a chance that the 5 gets it, and going 7 at Keeneland, like, I'll take a shot at another long shot here, and see what happens.
Yeah.
So Josh, I gotta ask: is there any way that you're somehow related to the trainer of this horse, or are the trainer of this horse under a pseudonym?
I am not. I would need to disclose that, I believe, if I was playing in any tournaments. But no, I am not. No relation. Just share the same last name.
I mean, Illinois bred, same last name. I figured, it just was too coincidental.
Happens.
The horse has every right to bounce to the moon off the last 2 races, but if he doesn't, he actually fits. So I'm kind of
he does actually fit.
I'm kind of with you.
Josh started talking about him. I'm like, oh, it's got to be some E8 in here. I missed it. I'm looking at it. I start looking through it. I'm like, I don't hate this horse.
I mean, like the last 2 races on Briz,
it's bad. Like, you should be getting 20, 30-1 on this horse, but
I mean, I'm just the last 2 races on Briz fit. And I was just like, I mean,
it's on time form and Thoroughgraph. The last race, especially.
Yeah. And like the tough thing about the last race is it's sloppy at Fairgrounds, and those, and Fairgrounds was just weird this meet, I think. But I don't know, maybe I say that every meet. I didn't know what to make of the track, and make of some of the races, and I had a hard time betting at this last meet. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting. Nick Feldman, showing up from the dead, the Hall of Famer himself, and he says Wico and Call Me Fast are my top picks. Obviously, Mark and I both like Wico and Call Me Fast. I don't know if we didn't talk about that one. The 8. Any interest in this 8 horse here on the cutback? He's got it. He broke his maiden going 7 at Keeneland.
And he does like Keeneland. He's been keeping good company consistently.
He's got the right jock for that run style.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I thought the race would be won by somebody in the front third of the field, and I just don't think it's a trip he's going to get. I know he has shown speed a couple of times, but lately that hasn't seemed to have been the case. Cutting back, I don't know if he's going to have the speed required to really contest the front end. I mean, 2 of those last 4 losses have been against Rattle and Roll when Rattle and Roll was in very good form. So there's things to like for sure. I just don't want to spread any farther, but I do think he could win this race. Yeah.
All right, let's move on here. We got race 7. Caleb, can you please pronounce this so I don't upset our viewers?
The Appalachian.
Thank you. The Appalachian here. We're going to be going a mile on the turf. Grade 2 for fillies, 3 years old, and it was funny, Caleb. I was looking at this race, and I was like, man, I'm gonna end up on a McPeak horse, and then I realized that apparently Brian Hernandez rides for trainers other than Kenny McPeak, So it's not a McPeak horse. It's a Rusty Arnold horse, unfortunately. But yeah, I landed on 2 horses here. Obviously, the one poolside with Slim is going to be, I think, rather loose on the lead in this spot. Is drawn inside. Maybe you question a little bit first time turf, what happened at Tampa in the Florida Oaks. But Rusty Arnold always points to this meet. He tends to fire live ones here. And, I think, they are going to, I mean, it's a half furlong cutback. Did win breaking his maiden on a synthetic trip, going wire to wire with Luis Saez aboard. And you get Brian Hernandez aboard, who, is fine. I mean, he doesn't necessarily excite me, but I think they should have a pretty clear plan here to get out here on the front and try and wire this field. I think he's got a good shot to do it here. But if you scroll down, I mean, do we really think we're going to get 10-1 on the 6 Austere in this spot? That's got to be. So. That's got to be a little bit of a bad line.
Welcome to Keeneland.
Yeah, welcome to Keeneland. Exactly. Like, we know the lines have been horrible. The morning lines on this race, if they hold up, are just absurd. I mean, the morning lines here make absolutely no sense. So, does Austere has to take money, right? Like, has to. Like that's no way.
Yeah, I mean, I love this horse in this spot. I mean, you cross you look at the first 2 races. Obviously this horse was coming into the BC Juvenile Turf as one of the top-ish picks. I think he was probably like 5th or 6th choice in that race, and finished 5th by 2 lengths, so didn't necessarily embarrass herself there. And then obviously had the layoff, and then that Florida Oaks kind of same thing. Seemed to kind of save some ground and improve, but I think maybe it was just a little too far back in that spot, and she's tend to have been a little bit closer up in her other 3 races. So horse obviously is coming in with some nice works on the work tab, and Brendan Walsh, he does great second off the layoff. He's 23% second off the layoff. I think this is a really, really nice spot for this horse. Gets Tyler aboard, who rides at Keeneland very well, and I just thought that this was a really, really good spot for Austere, and I thought that was definitely in here with a chance to improve off that last start. And I think any step forward from the last start wins this race. So. I'm going to go with 1 and 6 as my top picks. I do have a B, but I'm assuming that one of you guys are going to talk about that horse. So, Caleb, where did you land?
Yeah, so I do also agree with you on the 1 pull side with Slim. That Florida Oaks race kind of fell apart, and pull side with Slim had objectively a pretty good trip, but I think the jockey just moved a little bit too early that race. The pace was on the swifter side for Tampa with the distance and whatever else, and the closers kind of dominated. And I thought the horse had a great tracking spot, saved a bunch of ground, and just moved a little too early. But I thought that was a really impressive run in here. I think you do get a jockey upgrade from Ruiz to Brian Hernandez, who apparently does ride for people besides Kenny, who. And I agree with you. Pull side with Slim, whether it's on the lead or maybe just off, I think this horse gets a good trip in here and definitely is a contender. Austere isn't really for me. I wanted to see more from her out of the Florida Oaks. The Brisnet tells somewhat of a different story than the Thoroughgraphs or the Time Form. My opinion of her is that she really hasn't improved at all in her last 3 starts. Brisnet would suggest that she has, so I guess it maybe depends on what figures you believe. But Time Form and Thoroughgraphs kind of shows her running the same race 3 times in a row, and maybe she needed a race off the layoff, but I was just hoping to see more from her in that Florida Oaks. In fact, I bet her pretty heavily in the Breeders' Cup, and she had a great trip and came up short in there too. So for me, not one I really want to use, but at 10-1, that's a great price if you get that. But the horses that I other indexed in a little bit more heavily, one of which was the number 5, Kyreu. I'm not sure how you say it. but the European invader that has now been transferred into Cherie DeVoe's barn. This horse is 2 for 2 on the turf. Actually won a Group 3 at the Corral, going 6.5 furlongs. Is really bred to get every bit of this mile, so I'm not worried whatsoever about that. Didn't run at all on the synthetic, but I'm just going to chalk that up to the fact the horse didn't handle the surface at all, because the 2 runs on turf were really quite impressive. So I think this horse is really well meant in here. The fact that DeVoe goes out and acquires Irad Ortiz, take the mount, and at least what Brisnet shows is only one starter that was an international shipper, but she did have a win with that one. So to me, this is a horse that appears fairly well meant, has been training pretty consistently leading up to this race. And the other one I like, who I can talk about because I know Mark's going to talk about the fucking Castellano horse, is the number 9, Buku. This is a Phil Bauer horse who does phenomenal work with a relatively small stable. He's 28% over the last year or so, and pretty much any metric you look at is just outstanding. This horse is another whom I fancied a bit in the Breeders' Cup race. Ran a decent race, just wasn't quite good enough that day. It's okay, but has a very impressive win in here at Keeneland at this distance, or a 16th longer in the Jessamine in 2023. Remains to be seen how she'll perform off the layoff. 4-1 is perhaps a touch on the short side for what I'd like to see. But this is a horse that, looking horizontally, I'm willing to accept somewhat of an underlay on a horse that I think is a very likely winner of this race. And I'll try to get my prices elsewhere.
Yeah, so I know Josh already mentioned the one pool side was Slim. That's one of my top selections in here of my top 2. For I think all the reasons you guys sort of mentioned about that horse. So I don't want to talk that one to death. And Caleb did mention, I know he talked a little bit about Austere, and I have very much the same take on Austere that Caleb does. I don't think you get that price. I think the horse takes money, just kind of being a more known quantity. But I'm not super interested in Austere. I very often see these fillies that are very precocious at 2, and then they don't take a step forward moving to 3. And I just really wonder if Austere is one of those that doesn't take that next step forward. He did mention Pounce, who I do like. I have the horse written down as a B. Pounce has won 2 in a row, 3 or 4 lifetime, gotten 2 going this trip. But I don't necessarily love the draw here. I think Pounce is pretty well outside, and is going to have to kind of invent a trip for a horse that is kind of, I realized from the last race, the horse did come from more outside of it, but his historically wanted to seem to be a little bit more forwardly placed. I don't dislike Pounce, but I think at 3-1, if that's the kind of price you're getting on the horse, I think that's a little short for me. So the horse that I'm really kind of super interested in here, and I hope gets a bit ignored on the board, is the 4-horse Grecian Goddess for Chad Brown. You're talking a horse that broke its maiden on debut at Tampa, and now ships up here and moves into the Chad Brown barn. My guess is that they ran this horse at Tampa, realized that the horse was pretty darn good, and decided that
yes, finally
that they would put that bar into the arguably the top turf barn in the country. And they went out and grabbed Flavian Pratt, who's as good a turf jock and is in the country. And he and Chad just at Keeneland are absolutely lights out. And they have been for the past couple of years. When Chad puts up Flavian, it's go time, and those horses tend to run extremely well. I realize you're getting the class test here, but the pedigree top and bottom screams that this is the trip and this is the surface. And I think Grecian Goddess may not take a ton of money just off from being a little bit of a more unknown factor. Obviously maiden breaker, first time versus winners is always hard, but I think you get around that morning line, and I'm extremely, extremely interested in this horse if that does happen.
Good use of the alert, Josh.
Thank you. I'm not interested in this 4 at all, but of course he's going to boom me.
She even.
Or she, yeah. Yeah, I have Buchu written down as a B. I think this horse makes a ton of sense. Obviously it has won here at Keeneland. I don't know. I really did prefer the 1 and the 6, but I feel like of the shorter prices, the 9 makes the most sense. Maybe is your most likely winner in here. So I really like the 9, but
Hey, Caleb, I had a question for you here, and it's more because we both said the same thing about Asteer. I had the exact same thoughts you did. This is a horse that has not taken that step forward and has run 3 of the same races in a row. Can't you say the same thing about Buchu? Is another horse that actually has regressed on time form the last 3 in a row? And the last out was the Breeders' Cup Juvies. The things happen. I get it. But we haven't seen a prep for this one going into this race. And is there an argument to be made that I think Buku probably has to take a step forward off those 2-year-old races to be a major player here. But I never love to see a horse kind of run 3 of the same races in a row, especially that earlier in their career.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. I wouldn't totally disagree with that. I do think I'm a little more willing to maybe not forgive Buchu, but be willing to go back to the well because I haven't seen the horse since November of her 2-year-old season. Whereas I have seen Austere come back in March as a 3-year-old and the time when you're expecting that move forward and it just didn't happen. But I do think if somebody wants to say, I do agree, Buchu at 4-1 feels a little short for me. I agree with your perspective there. This is a horse that has kind of 2 good races that would probably need to improve upon to win. But I agree with you that this is a horse that sort of had a fair trip, in the Breeders' Cup. I mean, maybe tugged a little bit, but was really no better or worse than Austere. And, I think the same argument could apply. So I think that's a fair point. I'm maybe willing to be more forgiving considering I haven't seen the horse since October compared to Austere, but that's also kind of baked into the price. So I think it's a reasonable argument.
Yeah, I would say Nick Feldman put up the exact thing that I was thinking with Buku, which is that or Buchu, however you say it. This is a horse that you watch this one and then you wait for them to show up on the Derby Day or Oaks Day undercard. That's exactly how I was kind of looking at this horse. So
I'm a little bit just curious to maybe ask the audience here. How many of you think Pounce actually goes off as your post-time favorite?
I do. I think Pounce is your favorite. Yeah.
You think Pounce is your favorite?
Yeah, I do.
I think she's not. What do you think, Josh?
I'm not a fan, but I don't know if I'm just putting my own handicapping into that thought.
I don't know who the favorite is. I could see it being the 9 who we just talked about. I could see the favorite being Austere, truth be told. And I could see it being a couple of others. I don't think Pounce goes off. I mean, this horse has never been shorter than 5-1, and it's now going to go off the favorite in a grade 2. I mean, for moderate connections, I guess we'll say, from a rough post. I don't think this horse. I don't like the horse at 3-1. If the horse is 6-1, then I'm extremely interested. But I don't know. Keeneland's tough. Sometimes I think Nick, when he makes the lines, tries to get too clever, and things like this happen.
Yeah, I could also see Cairo the 5 to being the morning line favorite, or sorry, being the post time favorite. I mean, I've seen times where Euro shippers, first time start in the U.S., have just gotten bet off the board in Kentucky, and normally when they do, they're pretty well meant. But I've definitely seen times. I can remember a couple of horses that were 6 or 8-1 on the morning line, and they go off at 2-1, and they win for fun. So it wouldn't surprise me if that one takes a ton of money and is really really well meant there as well.
Yeah, I think if that horse goes off as your favorite, it's probably extremely live. But yeah.
But the thing is, in this race, your favorite may be 4-1. It wouldn't.
I would agree. I wouldn't take anybody less than 4-1 in this field.
Exactly. When we're saying favorite, we're not talking 2-1. We're talking you're gonna either. There's even value in the favorite. So.
All right. Anything else in this race?
I do want to ask, because we're talking to the audience, Florida Crap Shooter, what's your take on crapless craps? I mean, I need some feedback here. I have a friend who is a major fan.
I'm telling you, crapless craps are only good if you're betting the big numbers. You bet the 2 and 12. Betting the past line is actually an awful fucking bet on crapless craps. But which is funny because I just had some craps players on the podcast, so we'll have that up. But all right, let's move on here while we give Florida Crap Shooter a little chance to catch up. Madison, grade 1, 7 furlongs, and Mark and I talked briefly about this race, and I think we both agree. So Caleb, I'm gonna let you go first and see who you picked in this race, and maybe this will be a quick one for us to get through.
Oh, I don't have an opinion in this race. This was one of the ones that I think if the 6 Alva Star or the 8 Vava win, I'm not going to be surprised. But truth be told, I could make an argument for nearly any horse in this race, probably besides the 4 Icicles. I think that horse is going to be somewhat up against it in here. But yeah, at first I had written down the 2 Red Carpet Ready as kind of the horse I was interested in. I kind of went back through and looked at the race a few more times. If you're looking at the thoroughgraphs, I think that you can argue the 5, Mary Quite Contrary, is a huge pattern play who tends to kind of run an off race followed by a big race more frequently than not, kind of sitting on a big race if you follow that through. But this is a tough race. I mean, the 3 horse Hot and Sultry, if you throw out the 2 turn races, is quite dangerous around 1 turn. So yeah, I thought this was a difficult race. I don't know how we all know I'm going to play the pick 5, but I think your most likely winners are unfortunately the 6 and the 8. If I had to pick a winner as it stands today, I would go with the Nava, unfortunately.
Wow.
I assume you guys both were on the 6.
Yeah.
Lone Speed. I think this is a wire job.
What makes you think this is Lone Speed? I mean, does the 4 not exist?
I mean, you just said the 4 didn't exist, so
he can't win. But I mean, his only shot to win is going to be sending his brains out and trying to hold on. Although I do think the 6 is significantly quicker. But
yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at the 4's maiden breaker, right, she did go 21-4 and went wire to wire in that race. But I mean, yeah, this horse is finished second in that grade 2 to obviously Vava, who ended up winning that race. But wired the prior S before that.
Don't you have to be a little worried about the distance? I mean, her one time at 7 furlongs, I mean, she was 2 lengths clear turning for home and got run down by Vava, and this is a very similar setup in my mind. So aren't you a little worried about that?
I think she's a 4-year-old now. She was a 3-year-old when that happened. Very common for horses to suddenly have a hard time getting a distance, and then being able, as they get a little older, that stamina comes in a little bit. Again, that was the one question mark I had, Caleb, was can she get the distance? She failed the one time she tried it. But I think she's just she should be the speed in here. I like to see Gaff get aboard. And I think she, very much to how Josh thinks, I think she clears here. And everybody's got to chase her down in a lane. In Keeneland, opening weekend, big day, big card, tends to be very, very speed favoring. So I think that speed probably carries a little better now versus in the fall, where I think the track plays a little more fair. Again, personal opinion. I have no data to back that up.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the big question is the distance. I mean, Vava's 3 out of 4 with 3 wins and 1 second out of 4 starts at 7 furlongs. This is clearly her trip. She's 1-1, first and second out of 2 starts at Keeneland. There's a lot to like there. I mean, there is a layoff to work with, but Cherie DeVoe is quite good on the layoff. It's hard. This is a horse that's never more than a length or 2 off the pace anyway. For me, I mean, but heads up, I think it's close, but I would give the edge to Vava, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I landed similar to you, Caleb. I mean, I did like the 6, but I thought my second pick, and I have written down as a B, would be Red Carpet Ready. I thought that, I didn't want to touch Vava on this race, and I think with the better draw for Red Carpet Ready, obviously you get Louis Saez aboard. Once again, Rusty Arnold pointing towards this meet, coming off that nice win at Gulfstream, is a horse that's got a 7 furlong win in the 8 bells, sitting that kind of tracking trip. So I thought Red Carpet Ready made a ton of sense. Has got a lot of class coming into this race, which I know class doesn't matter until it does. So I was 2 as my lone B and 6 as my lone A here, which I don't think is terribly I don't think I'm sticking my neck out or anything. I'm not taking Illinois bred horses in this race. So.
Yeah, the only other horse we haven't talked about that I think we probably should is the one Sterling Silver. Josh is going to throw some simple alert up here, but if you cross off the turf try, she's won her last her last 3 dirt races. She's 4 of 8 going this distance. She was a real cheap purchase though. They paid $13K for her, and she's won $692K on the track. She's been very, very, very good. And if you think that somebody like the 4 and the 6 hook up on the front end, they're going to set her up to close. Her best stuff has not come at Keeneland, but she hasn't run here very often. And, she was in things like, the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint back in 2022 here. So I think Sterling Silver as, maybe the only other horse that makes my ticket after, I probably would play this in a pick 5 as Alva Star is my lone A and Sterling Silver is my lone B.
So no 8 anywhere?
Nope, no 8 anywhere.
Okay.
I don't dislike it. I don't really trust that last out figure, Caleb. I guess that's my big thing. I don't know. I realize she's been in good form, but I don't know. Something about her form looks just a little off to me. I don't know why. I mean, I guess there's an argument made that she just kind of keeps getting better and better and better, and she takes another step forward here. But I know I didn't have her anywhere.
I'm actually going to call an alert on myself here real quick, because I feel like maybe this is what's happening right now. Yeah, I wish I had. I mean, maybe I gotta go back to the drawing board on this one because, I mean, what do you think? Vava goes off the favorite, or do you think the 6 goes off favored?
I think Vava goes off favorite. It's Irad Ortiz, and she beat the 6 last time out, so I think Vava goes off favorite.
Okay. Because I was gonna say, if you're gonna tell me Vava is 3-1 and the 6 is like 2-1, 9-5, I think maybe I changed my opinion on this, but
I could be wrong. It's worth noting that when they faced each other last time, Vava was 5-2, Alva Star was odds on. So I could be wrong there. I don't know, but people love their E8s. It's not just you. But I think that Irad.
Your dad too, yeah.
Yeah, he does. I think Irad makes a difference here from the tote.
Yeah, and I will say that with Vava, and again, I'm inventing reasons to be against her. DRF has that as a very closer favoring, or as a closer favoring track, I should say, not a very closer favoring track. And she just got up by a half length. So if the track's playing a little more speed favoring, a little more fair, does she get up? Probably not. But I'm inventing reasons to be against a short price. So she beats me, wouldn't shock me, but I feel like I have to take a stand somewhere in this sequence, and I want coverage other places.
And I hope you saw in chat, Florida Crap Shooters did hook you up with the crapless craps knowledge there. So
my knowledge of craps, I have watched people play craps for I don't know how many hours, and I still don't understand what's going on. I just wait for somebody to start cheering, and then oh yeah, it's great, yay! I have no idea what's going on.
It's so funny, Caleb. So I'm on podcasting with these guys, and I'm telling them the story of us sitting at the bubble craps thing, and you're like pressing all these buttons. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, I'm betting the numbers. And then after that, dude, it's like craps was unlocked for me. And I was like, oh, you can do all this other stuff, and I've lost so much more money, much faster.
So many more ways to lose money than you knew.
Yeah. I was like, oh, 3-point Molly. I know what this is. And then you're like, no, you can also buy all these numbers. And next thing you know, $200 is out there on the table.
For one moment, though, it was glorious.
It was. Although I felt like that night, maybe it was at Planet Hollywood, where we got just absolutely killed because we only played for like an hour.
It was bad.
If that. And I felt like anytime we'd get something going, like we'd collect the first one, and then we'd immediately press the next one, and immediately 7 out, and then we just kept on doing that. And then drink service wasn't even that good, I don't think. But
right,
this is tough. Race 9 at Shakertown, one of Mark's favorite races of the year. The man loves himself.
But my boy's not running. He's not running this year.
Yeah,
he's like 12 now, and he's officially retired. So.
I thought this was a really fun race. Your morning line favorite is the 3 Mischief Magic, yeah. Nick Feldman is basically going right where I was
Spot
at.
on. I knew where you were going, so I just brought it up.
I'm like Mischief Magic is a closer here, and Turf Sprint with just no speed, and I kind of landed similar to where he did. I mean, I think you got to use the 12. I know he drew the outside post, but I mean, there's just no other speed. And I mean, you go back a couple races, and he drew with a 9 post twice at Gulfstream, and both times was able to clear and get the lead. Now I know there's 3 additional horses at this point, but I think that the 12's got a shot here as kind of being the lone speed in this race. So, I really don't have anything smart to say other than, I mean, 12 is probably your lone real speed horse here, going 5.5 furlongs on the turf. I feel like you're getting 12 to 1, which I think is, I mean, a turf sprint, those are the types of prices that I want to take. But to Nick Feldman's point, he does mention the 2 horse, so Sua Summer, and last time out at Fairgrounds, this has been a horse that has been a little bit further off the pace, but you kind of look at the jockeys that have been aboard, right? You see Rosario aboard a couple times, and Rosario, I think, has given some nice rides on this horse, but obviously coming from off the pace. But all of a sudden, you get Luis Saez aboard, and this horse is literally right on the pace, is sitting second, off a length or two. So I think that there could be a chance if maybe this horse just breaks really well, that Luis is just like, all right, I'm going to take this. And hey, worst case, if that 12 does try to come and cross over him, I mean, that's all the more energy that 12 is going to have to spend. So I really do think the 2 does sit a good spot here, is going to be forwardly placed, and is going to be not necessarily like speed, inside drawn speed the way we think of it, but like is the fastest horse that's drawn inside. So I think he's, just because of that, he's going to get the easiest trip out of any of the horses in this race. And I do think that his best, like that race last time out, at least on Brisnet, does fit here. I haven't had a chance to look at any other figures, but I think he makes a ton of sense. The 3's obviously your favorite, but I mean, Charles Appleby, when I think of him, I don't necessarily think turf sprinters, and maybe I could be wrong there a little bit. I mean, I'm sure he's trained some good ones, but I think he's tend to be known more for the stayer type. So, and Russ is coming in saying last year the 1 to 3 post position only won once in turf sprints. Thanks for just shitting all over my pick, Russ. So I appreciate that. And I had a ethical dilemma here. Do I take noted money burner beer can man here, which I know Mark is going to talk about it, but I'm going to go one outside for the Marsico brothers here. Bad Beat Brian is a horse that I feel like has always run pretty decent here at Keeneland. I feel like he's run some really big races, including a second by a head to Caravel last year in this race. I think this is a cool horse. This is a horse that just shows up every time he runs, right? He doesn't necessarily win all that often, but I mean, you look at some of these races, like the Kentucky Downs Turf Sprint, finished 3rd by a neck to One Timer and Gear Jockey, who are both really nice turf sprinters. Obviously, 2nd to Caravel, and obviously won a race against Smoking Jay and Just Might at Churchill Downs. So I think he's an interesting horse. I think he's a cool horse. I think he's going to also sit kind of a nice trip here, pretty forwardly placed. And he's going to be a huge price. I have him written down as an A, maybe more of an exotics type, maybe one you use 2nd and 3rd in a trifecta or exacta. But I thought the 5 Bad Beat Brian was a little interesting here. But I'm going to stick with, I think, the 12 and 2 as my top picks in this race. So, Mark, where did you land?
Yeah, I know you already kind of alluded to it. I have been on the wrong side of Beer Can Man for I think every single race he's basically ever run. I think every handicapper has that one horse that you just can't get right with. I mean, the freaking horse is 7 for 18. I should have been right on him once, but he only seems to win when I'm not betting him. But I really wonder. And you sort of mentioned this, and I know everybody's kind of alluded to. There's no pace in this race. When there's no pace in a race like this, and you have this is probably one of the better jock colonies you're going to get all year. Does everybody look at the form and go, oh, well, I got a horse with a little speed. Do I send and be really aggressive and somehow melts this down? Right? Like, does everybody say, geez, there's no pace in here. I'm going to go and I'm going to press it. Normally 5.5 furlong races don't melt down, but I do really like Beer Can Man in here. I think he can sit just off what I know. There's no real monster that's going to be flying in the front end here, but as he sit kind of that first run, if they get a little feisty in the front end, he kind of takes over. He's going to sit just behind, probably covered up third, fourth, fifth, that kind of a place. And he's 6 for 12 going this trip, but I just can never get on the right side of him. I don't actually think you get 8-1 on him. He probably takes more money off that line, but I think he sits the perfect trip. He's got a great draw, and he's shown that his figures sort of fit in here to be a major player. And the only other horse that I was interested in was the 6 Arzak for Trombetta, who is perfect across the strip, winning the Woodford, the G2, going this distance in the fall. Really, really, really nice horse. This is first off a long layoff, which is not Trombetta's best. Normally his take a start or two to kind of get rolling, but Arad does seem fit to hop up. I realize Sayers, who is up, doesn't take the mount back, but Arad's not a bad replacement. So I think Arzak kind of sits that similar sort of trip, can sit behind some of the speeds, some of the horse Josh has mentioned, like the 11, the 12, or even Sousa Summer if they do decide to go, and gets that first run. So I think it's the right type of trip to win this kind of race. So those are the two I was most interested in. Actually interested to see what Caleb has here, because he oftentimes comes up with some stupid price that blows up the board, and this is the kind of race where that happens.
It feels like it is, but I don't have anything that is super crazy relative to what we've already talked about. I see the race kind of close to Josh, actually, is that I don't see much speed in this race. And for a turf sprint, that feels somewhat unusual, but I don't see very much early speed here. I'm against Mischief Magic. I don't think this horse gets the right setup. And I think that was just a very weak running of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. If he wins, he can do it without me. William Buick didn't even ship over for this mount, so I don't need that horse. I'm with Josh also on the number 5, Bad Beat Brian. This is a horse that has always done his best running when he's somewhat involved in the pace scenario. And when he's going up against some extremely quick horses, he can't quite keep up, and then he finishes more like mid-pack. But I don't see a lot of speed in here. I don't know that he gets the lead necessarily. That maybe somewhat surprised me. But I think he's going to be forwardly placed in a race that doesn't have a lot of speed. And I think that's when he's run his best races by far. I mean, furthermore, I think you can argue that he might just hate Gulfstream. His last 2 races at Gulfstream have been very poor. But if you kind of ignore those and on Time Form or Thoroughgraph, go back to any of his previous races, he's a player in here. I mean, he's not your most likely winner per se, but he's 20-1, and I think he makes a lot of sense. So I do like Bad Beat Brian with Josh. I agree with Mark about Arzak. I think he's a horse that a 6-year-old that all of a sudden fired 2 huge races in his last 2 is a little bit concerning to me, but it's hard to argue with the results. This is a horse that has put together 2 good races. The other horse I kind of want to talk about, well, 2 more. To further Josh's point, the number 12, Yes, I Am Free, almost certainly going to be your leader in here. Does a lot of winning, but has gotten caught a few times lately. So an 8-year-old gelding, they're junior, not the jockey I want from that post, but 12-1 is a price that horse will make at least one of my tickets. The horse that I do also find pretty interesting, though, is the horse that beat him last time out, which is the number 11, Coppola, whatever it is. This horse has won 3 of his last 4, is clearly like a 5.5 furlong turf sprint specialist. has the ability to be right up on the pace or to actually come from pretty far off, like he did 2 back in the Gulfstream Park Turf Sprint Stakes. So I think this is a horse that has a lot of versatility in a race like this without much speed. I think it'll be to his advantage to be a little more aggressive and take a forward position. And the fact that he can pass horses, I think is going to work out well for him as well. So he's one in here that I think also 6-1, maybe not the greatest price I would want, but he's one here that I think is a very likely winner and what really does feel to me like a wide open race.
All right. Looking at chat, I do see Russ saying Stalker's only won 2 last year. So he does think it looks like the inside posts weren't great, and the Stalker's only won 2 last year. I mean, maybe it does set up for horses like the 11 and 12 here. Maybe we do get a little bit of these outside horses with a shot. And then Nick kind of mentioned what you said. If Buick isn't on the Appleby, he's going to try and beat. And it's interesting. Appleby's got a couple of starters in this opening weekend, and no William Buick. So Nick also mentioning a horse he noticed a little bit late. Our Shot seems to run well at Keeneland. Second up the layoff, could run well here. That's the 10 horse. Even the JJ Simp himself, Mark, did not land on this horse, but I don't know. Mark, did you look at this one at all?
I really didn't. I don't know. The horse's best doesn't seem good enough to win this, at least on a time form figure standpoint. I think you got to get into the 120s, and I just don't see that ever happening here. A horse would sort of have to find a new top as a 5-year-old, maybe, but not my top choice in here. The one horse that I'm sort of shocked that nobody mentioned, especially not that Josh didn't mention actually, was the also eligible Mark of the Z, the 13, who's a horse that actually has some figures in here that would fit, and it's a Michigan bred. So it's one of those weird breeding horses that Josh might like with your jockey on it. I mean, I would imagine they have to go from that post, but a horse that hasn't won a ton lately, but it does have some figures that fit in there and is a little interesting at an absolutely absurd price.
I remember this horse blowing up the tote board, or blowing up, not the tote board, but blowing up my dreams, because I thought we were finally going to get Johnny Unleashed home. And I think he beat Johnny Unleashed like 2 years ago.
I remember that,
when I think we've been trying to make Johnny Unleashed a thing for a while, and but yeah, I don't know. I think I got kind of hung up on the whole speed thing, but I mean, this horse in that race was forwardly placed, and was posted out wide, but hasn't really like run back to that race in what, a year and a half. So I think it might be a little bit tough, but. All right.
So wait, you got hung up on speed. I can't imagine that. No way.
I'm like, that's why I'm like, I saw the 12, I saw the 2, and I saw the 5, and I'm like, yeah, like I want the forwardly placed horses, and I don't know if the 13 is going to be it, but we'll see. Hey, we'll see. Maybe it draws in, and maybe a horse like the 12 scratches out, and then we got a different pace complexion. So
yep.
And a Florida crapshooter like 6'10" for him, and as a repeat of the Woodford if the 12 goes. So he thinks it'll set up for the 6 and 10 here. But all right, race 10, the Bluegrass, and this is interesting race. We get the run back of Sierra Leone, Door Knock obviously here at 3-1, Just a Touch at 7-2. BU at 8-1, and then you get double digits on everybody else. And I thought this was this is a good race. It's the best race of the Derby Preps this weekend. I think you got 2 very, very strong Derby hopefuls in the 4 Door Knock and the 10 Sierra Leone. Obviously the 6 Just a Touch coming in here off of second place in the Gotham. Going to be trying to go 2 turns for the first time, and I had a hard time looking past Door Knock in this spot. Surprise, the E8. I thought of the short price horses that he was the most interesting. I thought that the race, obviously, last race, the Fountain of Youth, went wire to wire, won pretty convincingly. The race 2 back beat Sierra Leone by wiring on that aqueduct track, and I just don't see why Sierra Leone. I think will turn the tables in this case. Obviously we are going to be going an additional half furlong to his last race, but he's already gone this trip in the Remsen, so not really concerned about the distance. And so I just thought Dornoch made the most sense in this spot. Obviously Luis Saez stays aboard, so I think that Dornoch is your most likely winner. I will say I am very, very, very intrigued by this 3-horse Seize de Gray at 20-1. And Caleb, I hear Caleb couldn't hold his laughter in. But, I mean, that Oak Lawn race looked pretty decent. And, maybe this is me just maybe imagining too many things. But, they tried the Jeff Ruby Stakes. And, I mean, synthetic is its own surface. And having this horse go on the synthetic, I just don't think it worked out. And coming back off the synthetic, if you see some improvement based off of I see Mark already highlighted the takeout reducer. I mean, that's not a lot of takeout that's being reduced. All right, this horse is 20-1 the morning line. Let's settle down a little bit, but. Yeah, I mean, well, then again, it's a my racehorse, so maybe something stupid happens on the board. But I don't know. I thought that this
12-1 overseas right now.
Stop it! Really?
Yeah.
God bless it. Never mind. I don't want to touch this horse at 12.
He ran a decent race in the Jeff Ruby. I'll give you that.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just think that if you kind of track a little bit of improvement here based off of that Oak Lawn race and coming back to the right surface. I thought this was an interesting horse. Obviously, it's an arrogant, so distance shouldn't be a problem. But I don't know. This just seemed like a interesting horse to me. I think that the late pace figure, obviously in that Oak Lawn race, really kind of stuck out to me. That looks like a legit horse late pace figure. So I don't know. I was looking for something different. I thought the 3 Seize de Gray kind of made a little bit of sense. Probably more of an underneath type, but I have him written down as a B. But I don't know. I'm sticking with Dornoch. I really like him in this spot. Caleb, since you laughed and couldn't keep your wine in, where did you land?
I mean, I would bet Seize de Gray before I would bet Dornoch. I'll tell you that.
Oh, well, there we go.
I am I don't think Dornoch has a prayer in this race. The Fountain of Youth was horrible. He was 1-5. The only horses that had a chance to beat him all scratched out last minute. It was a very weird scenario. And we saw Ladon Bro and Frankie's Empire to return and get absolutely stuffed in a locker in the Florida Derby. Just absolutely demolished. In the Remsen, Dornoch had a emerald, maybe even diamond rail. Just a incredible rail that he took advantage of. He should have lost that race. He was headed by about half a length and then re-rallied along that gold rail on the inside to barely beat Sierra Leone, who had to come very wide and way off the pace that day. I don't think Dornoch can win this race. I've also heard rumors that the way they're training Dornoch is they're trying to teach him to rate in this spot.
I hate that. I hate that for Dornoch. God bless
Yeah,
him.
I mean, this is not a horse that I think wants to come off the pace. He doesn't need the points, so I don't know what the deal is, but that's another reason for me to not love betting Dornoch in this race. So I'm very against him. I do think Sierra Leone is a likely winner, but to quote our friend Chase Sessoms, our New Year's resolution is to maybe stop betting very short priced closers, like hopelessly deep closers. And this horse needs a lot to go right to win this race. He is probably the best horse in the race, but he definitely needs a lot of breaks. So I'm actually going with Nick Feldman here as my top pick, the number 11 Encino. This is a horse that is really a neck away from being undefeated. All of those have come at Turfway, but I think that you have to wonder with a horse like this. The Jeff Ruby was just March 23rd, 24th, whatever day it was. This is a horse that clearly relishes the synthetic. It's a Godolphin horse. They clearly want to win the Kentucky Derby. That would have been a much easier spot than coming here to the Bluegrass. But the connections are confident enough that this is a very talented horse. They send him to Keeneland to run in this spot. They get Flavian Pratt up, who's generally the first call for the Cox Godolphin trio. And he's improved in all 3 starts. He has the ability to wire a field on the front end. He also has the ability to come from very far back, depending how the race sets up. I think that versatility is going to be really advantageous here. And I think Encino just really fits this race. So there's a big discrepancy in figures if you compare time form versus something like Thoroughgraph. On time form, this horse does look pretty strong. On Thoroughgraph, he's not. On Thoroughgraph, it's a one-horse race, and that one horse is just a touch, the number 6. I'm a little bit skeptical of that horse for a number of reasons, but I do think that he's a horse that you probably want to include somewhere. But I think Encino at 12-1 has to be to play at that price.
Yeah, so first off, I'll start off with the fact that this is by far and away the best Derby prep by a mile and a half. And I am shocked that all trainers apparently decided with the same methodology, and they all end up with this is their final prep when there are so many other soft preps out there where they could have gone with a lot of these other horses. It's kind of baffling to me that so many of these what I think are ones that have a lot of upside kind of ended up in this race. It seems like everybody's sort of managing the same way these days. And it's really baffling that some of the, I don't know, quote unquote, lesser races, why wouldn't you ship some of these horses to the wood where you could probably clunk up for second, get yourself into the Derby, and with a horse here that might only run 6th or 7th? It makes absolutely no sense to me, but who am I? With that being said, I think it's fairly obvious. I know a couple people have mentioned Top Connor, the one. I think that horse is in there to set up and make sure that there's a good pace in here for Sierra Leone. But I think that horse also probably could, by doing so, completely screws up Dornock's race. But I think that also brings out a bigger thing in here is that the fact that both Dornock and Sierra Leone are already in the starting gate and the Kentucky Derby. So if you're a trainer of either of those, are you going to really crank your horse up? Yeah, I realize it's $1 million race. I get it. But the big prize is the first Saturday in May. So is your horse going to be 10 of 10 cranked for this? Probably not. Maybe they're 7 or 8 of 10 cranked. Maybe you're going to try something like somebody mentioned rating a horse that had, somebody like Dornock. Are they going to try to rate him? Those kind of things. Like we've seen that happen in these types of Derby preps where your horse is in the starting gate in the Derby. And are you going to try something different here? And I think that's an argument to, on both Dornock and Sierra Leone. So Josh is going to need to get all of his simple alerts up here and ready to go at the same time for my top choice in here. And I really wonder the 5-horse Good Money, who is the other chat. Yep, there it is. Excellent. Yes. So with good money, if you look at his Tampa Bay Derby, I think there's all sorts of asterisks you can draw through that Tampa Bay Derby. Basically, the fact that they circled the paddock for an hour before they went to the track because they're trying to fix the tote, and there's a very good argument that he just lost his race, and the fact that was too much for him to deal with. You end up with such a horse that I think there's still a lot of quality there. I think there's still definitely some upside there. And you talking about a horse where if I'm Chad Brown and I'm saying, geez, I got Sierra Leone, who I know is in the Derby starting gate. Am I going to try to set up for my other horse and get Calumet in the starting gate as well? I mean, would you not? Now, albeit he's got to take a major step forward. And he's got to find form that he's never found before, but he's an interesting player in here. And I think this is the kind of race, given all of those other factors, where you can do a little bit of fishing in here. And I know somebody mentioned I think Caleb mentioned Just a Touch being the Sheets play. I don't hate Just a Touch as well. I think Just a Touch is another really interesting player here for Cox. And I think there's also a couple of horses, somebody like an Epic Ride or and I know we've already mentioned Encino. Both of those horses are ones that we've never seen them on dirt, but they have pedigrees that say they could handle it. So I think either any of those have a lot of upside. But I'll land on the price and go with good money just because it upsets all my other co-hosts here.
Dude, you know,
that is the most fucking 4-dimensional cheesy ass take I've ever seen in my life. He's in here to set the race up for Sierra Leone, just like
how's he going to set up the race? He doesn't have enough speed, right? Like he does.
He has like 20.
No, he doesn't.
He has 22-2 speed in his debut.
You know what this is like? This is like the case for Thace. Do you remember the case for Thace? Do you remember how that turned out?
There was no.
He was always the rabbit.
Never a case. Like this horse got lucky to win a debut at Tampa, which was not a good race, and then was in there. It went 51 to the half and couldn't win against the other Chad, who was clearly the better of the two, domestic product, and then a couple of other bums who have no shot come first Saturday in May. Like, just absolutely no chance. But I mean, good luck.
It's funny because we joke about Mark picking the JJ horses, but you know how there's just a horse that JJ's on, and you're like, there's no way Mark can get to this one, and he still fucking gets to it.
Know.
He still gets to it. My goodness,
it's talent.
It is impressive. I mean, if you figure this horse needs to find how many points to get into the
a lot. Yeah. Probably needs 10 points on time form. Probably 10. 10, something like that.
Nick's talking about the two here, the Rapoli horse BU. He just sees Irad aboard and thinking that maybe this is well meant with Irad aboard, riding for Rapoli and Pletcher. This is a horse that took a while to break its maiden. Finally, was running in grade ones, even though he hadn't broken his maiden. But I don't know. Did you guys look at this one at all?
There's a lot of excuses for him in a lot of his other races. Nutella. The hopeful completely came apart at the seams. The American Pharaoh had Muth in it. Conquest Warrior is a real nice horse out of that Gulfstream Park maiden. Yeah, there's some excuses. I mean, I was looking for a fresh face. That wasn't one of the ones I landed on, but I wouldn't talk anybody off them. There's a lot of things to like there.
There's nothing to like there. This horse is command performance 2.0 and isn't good enough to win this race.
He can't be command performance. He actually won a race.
He did win a race. That's true. No, I don't like this horse. To me, I mean, Rapoli has so many horses with Todd Pletcher that he just runs out of places to put them, and he wants to have a Derby hopeful in every single prep race, and this feels like one that just doesn't fit to me. I mean, he got dusted by Conquest Warrior, who didn't do much running in his in the Florida Derby 2-back.
All right, race 11 here. This is going to be, and we're talking about this race just because it is it's going to complete the Turf Pick 3. And Caleb, I had mentioned before that Dick Dutrow is probably going to win a race here in Keeneland. Obviously, that means I like the 5 Masterpiece, but I think your bigger nemesis and the other horse I landed on. I kind of like the one Camp Hope in this spot for McPeak and Brian Hernandez. I really do think that I'm going to want a horse coming from off the pace in this race. And Camp Hope, I'm going to kind of cross the line through the Ellis Park race and just kind of assume that maybe that was just a little too far for him. But if you look at the two races that it looks like the pace kind of did fall apart. The Keeneland race, he was actually a part of that pace and obviously finished 6th, but the figure actually still came back A-okay. But if you look at the Churchill Downs race on June 1st, that race came apart, and it set him up to win at a pretty nice price. I think that there's a good chance that maybe we get a real honest pace here. I think the 3 is going to be some pace. The 4 is going to show pace. The 6, the 7, and I mean that's half the horses in an 8 race field. So I really do like the 1. Honestly, I would much prefer the 5 in this spot if this race was longer. I'm a little concerned that maybe this distance is too sharp for Masterpiece. I mean, when he was originally brought over here from Chile, he was running those marathon distances for Chad Brown, and then went into Mike McCarthy's barn for a little bit, Safi Joseph's, and then now he's landed in Rick Dutro's barn where he won the Red Smith last year, going a mile and 3/8. But this is just a horse I think wants to go a mile and a half plus. So I am a little concerned about the cutback, but I also just think he's the best horse in this race, or one of the best horses. I mean, maybe you make a case that the 3 is a much better horse, but I definitely think the five is is in here with a real big shot. I mean, what a surprise! He's probably going to be your second choice, if not your favorite, in this race. But I do like the 1 at a bit of a price, Camp Hope, to kind of upset with a pace meltdown. Mark, where did you land?
Yeah, I had a tough time with this race. I think my top 2 were the 3 and the 4, Running Bee and Dominican Pioneer. Obviously, I land on the morning line favorite for Chad and Gaff. I like Dominican Pioneer actually more. So I'm probably gonna get yelled at for being a Corrales simp in here. But I thought my take was there's a lot of pace on paper. Either somebody like Dominican Pioneer probably wires this race, which he hasn't been able to do in the last few because it doesn't seem to. I don't know if he doesn't have it anymore or what's going on there. But I think there's also some interesting price players. I know Josh went to Camp Hope if this doesn't come apart. The other horse I thought was a little interesting if it comes apart is the 2 Kittenden, who is one of your other closers, has the highest late pace in the field, and gets Julian Leparoux, who races sort of turf races coming apart, and him sprinting for home is sort of his jam. I wonder if this is a little too sharp for Kittenden. A horse that hasn't won in quite some time, but I thought if it does come apart, that was an interesting player there as well.
Caleb, bring us home.
Yeah, this was what I truthfully thought was one of the hardest races of the whole sequence. My only opinion here is I don't like the 3 at all. I don't like Running Bee whatsoever. I don't see why this horse is supposed to be 8-5. It should have won the last race. It didn't. 2 back, went off at 8-5, 7-5, and ran terribly. It really has only one going gate to wire. It can pass horses, but it's only really one going gate to wire, or passing one horse in the maiden 2 years ago. But there's too much speed in here, so I do not like Running Bee. That's the only strong opinion I have. I agree with you, Josh. I think Camp Hope, who really does seem to do well at Keeneland, and Masterpiece, who is the classiest horse of the field, make a lot of sense. I do wonder about Masterpiece at this distance. I think he's better a little bit longer, but the Rick Dutro magic is kind of hard to overstate right now with the results he's been having with some of these horses. So I think that both of those horses make some sense. If I maybe had to pick one horse that we haven't talked about, I would maybe look at the number 7, Ocean Atlantique, who it has in the past been somewhat involved with the pace, but really the only time he's been on the lead was that last start at Turfway. And that was clearly not a good race for him. But his last 3 races are almost too bad to be true. And I guess it kind of depends what you think of his last 3. You could easily attribute those to the fact that he hates the synthetic surface. Whereas if you look at his last 4 starts on the synthetic, they're really quite poor. And if you look at the turf races, they're significantly better, So I think that's one reason to be optimistic for a horse like him. One of the more tricky points is that he has handled the all-weather surface in the past, so it's a little bit hard to understand what happened in the last couple of starts. He is a 7-year-old gelding. Maybe he's just going off form. But this is a horse that on his day, as early as last year, was able to post a figure that would compete for a race like this, and does get that mid-pack tracking type of trip. So with Saez, Mike Maker, 3 diamonds, and getting back onto what I think is the better surface, I think Ocean Atlantique here makes some sense. So he's one at a half decent price. I think I will use. But I would agree with pretty much everything that both you guys have said. That Dominican or Pioneer, probably Speed of Speed, Masterpiece, Camp Hope. My only real opinion is that I don't want anything to do with running B.
Yeah, Caleb, you said you had one more horse, and I swore you were going to go to a credit the 6, who seems like such a you horse if I've ever seen one. A horse that a little bit of dirtied up form across those synth races weren't as good, but those 3 turf races, and one of them coming across the surface, that allowance race, and also the Kentucky Downs race, any of them, the Churchill race, all 3 of those were really, really nice races and seem to make a credit kind of a major player here. But smaller connections, smaller, less known jock, and maybe doesn't take the money. It seems like that kind of screamed to me that was a Caleb horse when I was capping the sequence.
No, I like him as well. My hesitation is I think the 4 is quicker, and I don't know if the 6 can win off the pace. But I do think that, pace complexion aside, a credit does look good in here, and I do love me some Luan Machado. So yeah, I don't mind that horse whatsoever. But I think from a pace perspective, he would have to work out a trip that I haven't really seen him do with success on the turf.
Yeah. Okay. Exact feedback, or exactly how I saw it. So yeah.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us. Great weekend of racing. Something for everybody this weekend. So, Keeneland's back. Obviously, if you missed it, check out our podcast talking about the late pick 3, or the turf pick 3. Sorry, on tomorrow's opening day card. And then, like I said, be on the lookout for more content. Maybe we'll get some more shorts up, talk about some of these other stakes races. Yeah, I think for Mark and Caleb, I'm Josh, obviously on thewronglead.com, at @wrong_lead. Our Twitter handles are here. Thank you guys so much for hanging out and commenting. We love all the feedback. Yeah, we'll leave you with Greg cheering home his horse.
12! Let's go! Where's the fucking line?